Hi there, and welcome to the Adventures with Jesus Today podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Berg, and this week we're going to be talking about what you celebrate accelerates. I was reading a testimony that one of my team was sharing. We have these Slack channels where we share good news of what God's doing. And she said she was taking the kids to school one morning and entering a new construction zone. It was pretty early. There were no workers present. But she didn't realize that she was just at the beginning of the zone and hadn't slowed down enough yet. So a constable pulls her over and gives her a ticket. And of course, in a construction zone, the fines are doubled. So she said, oh man, I haven't had a speeding ticket since 2007. And this is really bad timing for Christmas. But he said to her, well, this is what happens. And gave her the ticket anyway. And so as she is pulling away, her young daughter says, oh, he stinks. And she turned around to her daughter and she said, no, this is an opportunity for praise. He was just doing what he's here to do. He was legit. Let's just praise God in the middle of it. So they were driving down the road and they were just praising and thanking God for looking after them and who he is. And a phone call comes through on her phone. And so she ignored it because it's a number she's doesn't recognize. But after about 4 or 5 times of the same number phoning, she reckoned she better pick it up. So she picks it up, and this voice on the other end says, hi, this is Constable, and his name, right? And he says, I'm just letting you know that I'm tearing up the ticket. It'll be as if it never happened. Do you understand? She said she may have screamed a little bit, thanked him so much, and was just so thrilled at what had happened, right? It was such a beautiful example for both her and her daughter about the power of praise and what God can do in turning a situation that may look like it stinks into something that just gets to be an opportunity to thank God instead, right? And I was thinking about this, and last night our pastor that was speaking said he'd heard a phrase that said, when we complain, we remain. But what we celebrate accelerates us. And it struck me, and I wrote it down because it was so true. In Philippians 4:8, God encourages us, hey, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is just, whatever is good, think on these things. I encourage you to go and read those verses and actually memorize them, make them part of your daily living. That when we choose to celebrate, it accelerates God's purposes in our lives, his love for us, our own attitude about the day, right? Because my friend could have gone around the day going, oh, it stinks. But instead, she chose to praise. And God was then able to work in her circumstances. If she had complained, she would have remained in that bad mood and that, it stinks and I don't have the money and now we've got to pay double fine of Christmas. And it begins to be this story that goes around in your head and it turns into this victim thing that's just awful. That's not what God intends us to think or how he intends us to live at all. But instead, it turned into praise where God was able to then help her feel better because she was praising instead of complaining and turn a situation around for good. So as you go into this week, I want to encourage you to think about those things that are above instead of below. Think about the things that are true instead of false, the things that are noble instead of complaining, to call out the gold in someone instead of gossiping about them, to see people through God's eyes instead of the way you think you should see them. It is a total game changer that helps not only our own attitude to be better, helps us to interact with the world better, helps us to see God's point of view over and above ours, helps us to see the silver lining in things instead of the dark clouds. And it's just a fantastic way to live. I'd like to give a special shout out to my friend Megan, who's always listening to these podcasts. He tells me about them and he takes notes and he really tries to implement them in his life, implement the truth of what God says. So thank you to all of you like Megan who've been listening to this podcast for years and really taking the truth that God shares and implementing it into your lives, that you're on this journey with me and I get to be on this journey with you. This is the beauty of community and doing things together. So I honor you for your love of God, your pursuit of all he is and all that he has, and falling more and more in love with him as he shows you how much he loves you each day. So this is the adventure that Jesus is inviting you on today. Will you accept?